Welcome to my railroad photography exhibition here at the very remarkable Grohmann Museum. I cherish innumerable fond memories of my 32 years of association with the Milwaukee School of Engineering, both professionally and intellectually. I had the privilege to work with three presidents, Carl Werwath, Dr. Robert Spitzer, and Dr. Herman Wietz. My first encounter with Milwaukee School of Engineering began in 1965 when in the employ of Fitzhugh Scott Architects. I designed the 16-story Margaret Loeb Residence Hall that won the first honor award in Wisconsin Architects Annual Design Competition. 32 years later, I was blessed with an honorary PhD in engineering after serving as a Milwaukee School of Engineering regent for 13 years. At the same time, I was president and owner of Kahler Slater Architects in Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin. Know that I was and will continue to be a true believer in the Milwaukee School of Engineers mission. Now, back to my exhibition, The Railroad and the Art of Place. Special thanks go to Tom Bamberger, Milwaukee photographer who developed my original negatives on a limited number of prints, Scott Lotes, president and executive director of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art and dear friend, and Jeff Browse and his wife, Wendy Burton. Jeff is a fellow board member of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art and designer of my books. In addition, I owe a special thanks to the following friends who helped make this exhibition possible. Haley Page, exhibitions and event coordinator of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. Inga Velton, development director of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. James Kieselberg, second, director of the Grohmann Museum, Milwaukee School of Engineering. Joseph A. Swanson, director emeritus of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art and dear friend, fellow board members of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art, the Kahler Family Charitable Fund, Cynthia Wagner Kahler, my wife and fellow traveler. John Fasulo, railroad photographer and friend who encouraged me to publish the book, The Railroad and the Art of Place. John passed away in 2014. And John Gruber, friend and original founder of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. John passed away in 2018. And thank all of you for attending this evening. The art of place in the Western world can be traced through the mediums of painting and literature. Traditionally, culture-rich cities such as Paris, London, New York, or Rome are where we go to seek aesthetic satisfaction. But there are exceptions. One mysterious, compelling anomaly is the cold, stark, mountainous strip found along the southern edge of West Virginia that is contiguous with eastern Kentucky. Here can be found a humble stage where human will and machines either work heroically together or brutally clash in the Vestal forests. In the early 90s, I came to the realization that I have always been fascinated by the art of place. It has forever been in my soul. It was rooted in my love for railroads and the landscape as long as I can remember. Later in life, I learned that I could capture the essence of this dichotomy through photography. For many decades, I unconsciously harbored this passion without giving it artistic expression. Then in 2014, I read The Machine in the Garden by Leo Marx. 24 years earlier, I had found an article in the Sunday edition of the New York Times that highlighted the opening of an exhibition in a Manhattan art gallery showcasing a collection of black and white photographs of steam locomotives working the night shift by Winston Link. The images were captured in the coal mining areas of Virginia, West Virginia, and Tennessee. In particular, his West Virginia images caught my attention. By coincidence, the confluence of both of these discoveries would eventually set me on a new course to capture the essence of the art of place on black and white film along the main line of the Norfolk and Southern Railway in the hallowed hills of West Virginia. In 1992, my wife and I arrived in Williamson, West Virginia. It was the first of 6 one-week-long forays during the month of February, when the weather could be rambunctious and the features within the landscape tableau were most clearly defined. Leafless trees seen against beds of snow elevated the degree of contrast, thereby revealing the structural essence of each tree while adding an evocative dimension of scale. As a photographer, I was a novice. Armed with the best of intentions and my newly acquired secondhand Leica M6 camera, I was ready to photograph black locomotives and rolling stock under the bleakest conditions. There was no artificial staging of thundering trains as they passed my camera. My mission was to create an artful yet honest rendition of the changing face of this beloved industrial landscape that was being reshaped rapidly by political and market forces embodied in the guise of creative destruction. Promises were being made by powerful voices in the US Congress that by tearing down the old and replacing it with the new, better living conditions and increased accessibility within this geographically inaccessible place would be guaranteed. Sooner rather than later, narrow 2-lane highways, mine runs, mine tipples, and the modest miners' housing that collectively supported the local mining machine would be only a memory. At the same time, I was confident that my years as a professional architect, together with 3 years as an instructor of a basic design course at the university level, had given me a unique foundation of seasoned values and skills to look through a camera lens from a distinctly different point of view. I have loved railroads since 1937, the year that I was born. I have been sensitive to their context instinctively. My father worked for the DuPont Company. Consequently, we moved around the Northeast often and frequently visited my grandparents in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where my grandfather had a 50-year career on the Reading Railroad. An awareness of the human condition came naturally to me because I saw what many of my friends did not see. I was blessed with a keen sense of observation. I learned to express myself artistically through drawing and painting. I absorbed a healthy awareness of the attributes of an almost mystical environment during my formative years when I lived in Wyeth country in southeastern Pennsylvania. My parents were not wealthy, but managed to carry our family through the end of the Great Depression and the Second World War without undue stress. I played in the fields and woodlands around Chadsford, Pennsylvania, the 1777 site of the Battle of Brandywine. The result became a love for steam trains, history, art, and a sense of place. Beginning in 1967, after multiple visits to my parents' home in Western North Carolina, a profound appreciation for all things Southern was planted in my heart. The South is where my favorite authors resided, William Faulkner and Carson McCullers. This new avenue of interest prompted me to search for the art of place in particularly desolate corner of the land in West Virginia, where the railroad, the perfect personification of the machine aesthetic, either adapted to or changed the morphology of the garden with its endless network of steel rails. This epiphany appealed to my artistic sense. Williamson, West Virginia, the most prominent railhead along the Pocahontas Division of the Norfolk Southern Railway, was my starting point. I went there originally to photograph only trains, but soon became more interested in railroads and their relationship to place. Here could be found the rumble of slow-moving coal trains blocking vehicular traffic, the noise of banging railcar couplers, and backyards cluttered with detritus. Thousands of descriptive words could be saved if photography images were produced this honestly. At the time, I considered this to be a Shangri-La where trains passed under our hotel window every 20 minutes, 24/7 during the bleakest time of the year. Black and white photographic opportunities were everywhere. It was at this juncture that I learned that photographs of moving trains were not everything. Some of the most evocative visual images could be made without rail activity. A poignant sense of emptiness that prevailed at a particular moment could be captured and transformed into artful expression if I focus my camera on the tracks and trackside structures that define a place. As a result, lighting and composition became everything to me. More often than not, they became the cardinal elements of my vocabulary of art and photography. Several annual visits were required before I fully realized the hidden beauty and vibrancy of life that lay below the veil of gloom and loss prevalent amongst the hills and hollows along the tracks. Each annual visit conjured up the same question: how could these sturdy people maintain their sanity when wages were low and the threat of unemployment constantly hung on their weary shoulders? While a caravan of dark clouds hovered above or between bare mountaintops. Their quiet determination transmitted a message of unrelenting dedication to their own self-preservation, regardless of the hardships at hand. Their strengths bolstered my spirit and inspired me to return and stay the course, to search for the art of place when many around me considered my endeavors to be a waste of time. I learned to love detritus that I found along the railroad right away. Many unwritten stories fueled my imagination. They appeared in back alleys, byways slick with snow and ice, freezing rain, abandoned automobiles and appliances scattered around dwellings, and workers struggling with their daily commitments on the railroad. Poetry at its best, the language of the misbegotten. In retrospect, it was a transformative experience for me to discover paradise lost in a desecrated wilderness. My journey began with my love for the railroad and ended with a new respect for a timeless triad: man, machine, and his garden.